All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is maybe the first of many Martoc meetings in room 341 of the Capitol. We don't usually meet here. We usually meet over in CLOB, but I think this is an appropriate upgrade for our committee, and we'll see what we can do about having future meetings in this room as well, if I can work the microphones. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have on today's agenda 4 items. One is an update on MARTA's transformation initiatives. I see Davis Allen over there, so we'll get to you in a few minutes. Another is a presentation regarding mobile fare payment technology, and that's what we're going to take first. Then a security briefing with Chief Dunham, who is here, I see. And also then a presentation on MARTA's 2015 legislative priorities. And this is bearing in mind, or I will certainly bear in mind, that the board has not approved any legislative agenda right now. But I did ask MARTA staff to come and give us a preview of what they might be looking at in the upcoming legislative session so that we can get to work on our end of the equation, as that session is coming at us rather quickly. So let's start first of all with the mobile fare payment technology item. I do want to recognize my constituent, Connor Sen, who sent out this tweet that I then retweeted and ultimately addressed. I don't know if it was addressed directly on Twitter or not, but I do know that it concerns a matter that MARTA has been working on and actually has an announcement to make. And so I thought that it might be appropriate, it's certainly appropriate because I'm the chairman, for me to call my constituent up to set the scene for us, and then we'll entertain an announcement from MARTA as to what they plan to do about this. Connor, come on up. You'll need to stand at that. Oh, by the way, in this room, anybody who's doing a presentation needs to stand at that microphone.
So this was the Saturday of Music Midtown, and concurrently to Music Midtown was a Garth Brooks concert, and I believe a Braves game later that night. And so this is the Brookhaven MARTA station. My wife and I are looking to board. I, of course, had a loaded MARTA Breeze card. My wife did not. Neither did most of the other people here. So it took us a good 45 minutes to get through the line just to buy a Breeze card to get on the train.
So there you have it. This is the situation we're seeing here. Now, MARTA being very high-tech these days with Twitter and all of that good stuff, where I saw Lyle Harris is here. The communications guru for MARTA keeps on top of all of this stuff. And MARTA, of course, is very responsive these days. So they have a response. And the response is, we'll invite Mr. Parker up to tell us what he plans to do about this.
Right, and actually, this is, well, first, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, other members of the MARTOC committee. We have been working on a number of different things to improve the overall customer experience, and one of them is looking at how we handle fares. Because fares, of course, touch us in a number of different ways. So everything from the employee and the customer's interaction, we want to reduce as much friction as possible whenever we do that. We want to have things happen as quickly as we can, and again, just make it as customer friendly as possible. So as a part of that, we've been looking at how we can make our overall Breeze smart card system better and more effective. One of the ways you can do this is to reduce the amount of wear and tear on the existing system and reduce those huge crowds you just mentioned of people going up to the ticket vending machine and loading. And how do you do that? You can come up with a way of completely eliminating the Breeze card itself as a necessity, and therefore give the customer a new way of paying, a new way of uploading a new way of paying for their fare, and a new way of getting in and out of of our trains and buses and so forth. So we have a full presentation we want to present to you. Ming Si, who is our Assistant General Manager of Technology, and our Chief Information Officer, has a number of slides she wanted to present and show you where we are and what types of progress we've made in this effort.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ming, come on up. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Chair Jacob and committee member. Thank you for this opportunity here. I'm going to run through the agenda just really quick. We're going to talk about the mobile fare payment benefits and what our project's approach, what we accomplished so far, our current status, some next steps, and our high-level project timeline. Before we started the mobile fare payment project, we actually did a survey among our riders by our research analysis group. We surveyed about 2 weeks of time, and through the survey, we find out over 2/3 of MARTA's rider has smartphones, and about more than half of them actually downloaded MARTA's on-the-go app. And out of all these people download the app, they find out, like 90% of them find out our app is very useful. And over half of them actually think they will use MARTA's, they will use the smartphone to pay for a fare at MARTA. So that's what we did before we launched the project. And then when we started to look at that, we think a mobile fare payment really can bring convenience for the riders. I think people are very familiar with like these apps like Starbucks, things like that. People are increasingly used to using the phone to make payment. The iPhone 6 come out with the iPay. And really this is putting this ticket vending machine in your phone. So because each ticket vending machine costs about $60,000, and we can putting everywhere. So this is a way to get us through the hurdle. So as far as MARTA's operations, we think the vending machine will, the mobile fare payment will reduce our configuration and upgrade costs on our TVMs and reduce the cash handling, and we do not have to store that many car medias and also inventory management. On the other side of it is we can offer more opportunities for different kind of fare program. One of the program our general manager talking about is reward our frequent rider with some kind of benefits, things like that. So these things will be easily pushed out through a mobile fare payment kind of platform. And really this way we'll put a MARTA on the forefront with the technology. Number of agencies already actually started the mobile fare payment project. I think the ones with Oregon, TriMet, Boston, and MTA for New York and Dallas have already started some of the version of mobile fare payments. So our project approach is we are pretty much functional based. We don't want to limit the technology because the technology changes so much and a lot of them are new. So we really just kind of wanted to see, actually to tell the vendors what we want the system will do and let them come back with the technology. We will evaluate them based on their performance, how well they meet our function requirements. And this procurement process is a little bit different from our traditional one. It is a two-step process. The first step is actually doing a pilot, sort of like proof of concept with our employees, regional partner, and a number of pre-selected riding public. And the step 2 will be awarding the contract based on their performance and then do a full system implementation. This new system is going to be an account-based system instead of like our traditional system right now, which is a car-based system. So it has very little integration with our existing Breeze system. And then is also the goal of this project is actually integrating the fare payment with our trip planning system with the police's CNC application. Chief is going to talk about in a minute, and also some real-time trip planning system. So for our customer, they're going to be installing the software on their app, on their phone, and purchase their tickets and fare products with using their phone. And the amount of technology right now going on is what they call the QR codes, the barcodes. There's also the near field communication we're talking about. There's the little bit distance was called RFID, long range. And also lately is a lot of talking about the low frequency Bluetooth, which almost every phone have. All these technology can be used to do mobile fare payments, but what we, again, Marta, we wanted to do the function and then let the vendor to propose what's the best technology for us. So as far as the system components, we are, we're going to, the software is going to be installed on the customer's smart device. The fare gates will be modified to allow the customer to validate tickets and using their phones. And the buses, either they will be modified or we can actually show the drivers their fare product. Customers are going to have go to a website to load the fare or check their usage. And there's additional customer service tools will be built on the phone using the app, so they will be dialed for customer service directly from the phone. And then this is a regional multimodal kind of a account-based back office system, which will be used to support in the whole fare, mobile fare payment system. So what we have done so far is we have a lot of internal stakeholder meeting. We also had about 6 regional partner meeting with Greta, Cobb County, Gwinnett, ARC, and streetcars. We have incorporated their requirements in our statement of work. And also we went to the Mobile Fare Payment Summit at Austin. There's about 20 plus agency. We shared our projects and also our future projects regarding mobile fare payment over there. And we had some vendor demonstration over there. We also invited a bunch of vendor, including Cubic, Trapeze, and Masabi and Wire, all these new vendors to come and just know a little bit more about their project. So our scope of work is pretty much completed, and we are looking at releasing the RFP by the end of this month. So high-level project timeline, RFP releasing again is the end of this month, and we will try to go through the RFP process and receive the Board of Director approval in February 2015. The pilot will be kicking off May 2015. And through the July, and right after kickoff, there will be some installation and the customization going on with the software. So we're thinking about going to have a limited pilot release in from July to September to really evaluating the pilot program. And then if all goes well, then the contract will be awarded in November. And starting from November to April 2016 will be what we're doing for the full system implementation. So some of the next step we will do for this project is do the system branding and do the copyrights. We are looking at a marketing strategy to get the words out there to the public and engage the writers for the pilots. And also one thing we find out from other agencies is they do a lot of work through social media to actually for the customer service kind of thing. So we are looking at a strategy of how to do that. Talking about communication plans for media, and because of the phone, we, there's a lot of privacy issue with where you are, the location, and all the transaction you go through. So we're working with legal about developing these private policies and also the terms of use policy for the mobile ticketing software. And again, we are choosing right now, we are finalizing the routes and stations, vehicles, and also participants for the pilot programs. So I think that's it from me.
If I may ask, what do you anticipate the breadth of the pilot being? I mean, in terms of who would be participating, how that would compare to the total pool of people you would anticipate using this application?
Well, I think when we were looking at other agencies. I think for DART, Dallas, they use about 500 people. But last week, we just saw a newspaper release on WMATA. They used about 3,000 people as a pilot pool. So we will probably go from that number and that number, something in between, to actually get pick a good sample of the pool of users, and also have employee, which we have quite a few, to actually having a good sample of the usage of the system.
How will you be selecting folks to participate in the pilot program?
We're probably going to use our research analysis to go through these focus group, which we normally do. We'll be including like the EDITED committee or the different committee we have, and they have a pool they usually reach out to. But we maybe also solicit people from social media this time to see if we can get some participants.
And what do you think we're looking at in terms of cost ultimately for implementation? Or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, it is too early. I think once we have the pilot, we might have once we get the proposal back, we will have a better understanding. But we did initialize the project in a multi-million-dollar project. It is quite a lot once the entire, if we want to do an entire system rollout, because we're talking about over about 400 fare gates we have to kind of modify, and then the buses and everything. So the scope of it, and it depends on what kind of technology. Some of them are a little bit more expensive than the other. So it is quite a big range. I really can't give a number right now.
So you're keeping it flexible right now in terms of how you might go about implementation.
Yes.
But the vision is ultimately to be able to pay at the gate and on a bus with a phone, correct?
Yes.
With a mobile device.
So on the bus, sometimes it's easy because you can, just flash it, and that's what some of the agency does. You really don't need a reader because the driver can see it, and they can push a button on their control unit. So, if we decide to go that route, then the cost will be lower. But on the gates, you definitely had to do something to have the gates open.
All right, so this is, right now, I mean, this is a pretty wide-ranging RFP.
That's correct.
Then you want to see different potential applications.
Yes, and the technology changes almost daily basis. As we were talking about this, iPhone just rolled out this iPay, and how the protocols within that and using near field communication, that's all new to everybody. And Apple is keeping that world pretty close. And because of Apple has about 60% of mobile users, smartphone users out there, so they actually just added complexity of the project.
So about when do you anticipate getting the RFPs back then?
The RFP
or the
is
proposals, sorry, the RFP seeks the proposals. When do you anticipate getting the proposals? December.
Yes.
And is there, I mean, and I understand that right now, cost-wise, things are flexible, but can you give us an idea of, I mean, maybe in this meeting or maybe not, I mean, maybe it requires a little bit of research and then submitting it to us offline, but give us an idea of what other systems have ultimately paid to I think this is a worthwhile project under any set of circumstances, but I would like to get an idea of what other systems have done and how much it has cost.
Yeah, we definitely maybe we'll go back and we can do some more detailed estimate and then maybe submit it.
Okay.
We can definitely do that.
That would be helpful, just to understand where we might be going.
And to alleviate some of these inline waiting for the, like big events, we may work with the marketing department to do some outreach for push people to purchase through the website, because we do have a website which they can purchase ahead of time, and the product will be loaded on their cards. So we may go to do some kind of outreach program to push out through the social media, things like that, as an intro help before the mobile fare payments come in.
Further questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. But the takeaway here is that we're going out for an RFP this month on exactly the issue that Mr. Sen raised. And the other takeaway is that if there are any other customer service issues, certainly feel free to reach out even via Twitter by tagging Mr. Parker or members of the committee or MARTA's other social media channels. Because you very well probably will get your question or concern answered one way or another. All right. Yes. Okay. So we're sorry. Senator Fort has a question.
I apologize, Mr. Chair, for being late, but I was. I guess the meeting was on, and then we heard it was off, and then it was on.
It's on again.
So I had a couple of questions about the first presentation, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And if I could get.
We didn't do it.
Oh, okay.
We haven't. You
haven't even gotten into the.
You mean the transformation initiative?
Yes.
Yeah. You haven't missed anything.
Okay. Well, I'm right on time then. It's good to be with you. I thought.
Mr. Parker.
Yes, I wanted to bring up Davis Allen and give an update on the MARTA Transformation Initiative. And I neglected to mention that we have one of our board members, Ms. Frida Hardage, here in attendance. So with that, I will bring up Mr. Allen to give us the latest update.
A new addition to the board, and welcome aboard, and we look forward to working with you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the martoc committee. Today, we will give you another update on the MARTA Transformation Initiative. As it with the past, I'd like to show you all.
Hold on one second, Mr. Are we good? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Allen. Sure.
As in the past, this first slide is going to be the 12 initiatives that we're currently working on. All these initiatives in the blue are the initiatives that we've already started. And for the most part, they're all on target. The first two still have the green extension on them. Those two, we've gone past the completion date on those, but when I get into the status, I will explain to you what's going on with those two. But for the most part, all the way down through workman's comp, cost containment, we are currently working on all of those issues. Now, status on that first initiative, Procurement Enhancement Initiative. The goal here was to reduce models of procurement cycle time. We looked at our manual and procurement and all of our procedures there, and we're revamping our procedural manual. That is due to be reviewed and approved by the executive management team sometime in November. And that's the piece that's been holding up the completion of initiative number one. The executive management team will review it in November. Once that process is completed and approved, we will roll it out to all of the employees throughout MARTA for a training session on the new process manual for procurement. This next section is MARTA personnel cost efficiencies. Under this initiative, the major goal here was to achieve some personnel cost efficiencies. And one of the areas that we were looking at there to get the biggest achievement was in our healthcare and retirement. As I explained before, this initiative is part of our contract negotiation. It is ongoing and it is under negotiation currently. Hopefully we'll have the negotiation completed, and Keith may address that later on. This next initiative is our revenue enhancement. Under this initiative, the goal was to look at all of our existing revenues to see where we were current revenue were performing and try to increase the performance of all of our existing revenues. We also are looking at some new revenue sources that we can add to our original revenue. Some of those new revenue sources were station naming rights, billboard advertisement, parking, and alcohol advertisement. This is an ongoing initiative. This initiative will probably be over the next 5 years. We're constantly looking at revenues and doing market projection on revenues. Now, one we've got here is automated parking revenue control. We're going out with an RFP in the month of November, and we anticipate having a notice to proceed around September of 2015, with full implementation a year later from September 2015, with our parking initiative. Under the marketing project, as you can see, we're going with the billboard management. We're going to publish that RFP in October of this year. Our alcohol advertising, our pilot program is in place now. That is due to end in March of 2015 with the pilot program. We're going to publish an RFP for the audio advertising on buses, website advertising. We're evaluating that right now to see if that is a feasible advertising mechanism for us, and retail merchandise. We're also evaluating that program, and it's in a pilot state right now also. Now, the next two initiatives are HR payroll, and the one after that is mobility. With HR payroll, we've issued an RFP back on July 7th. We've had a number of people to respond to that RFP, and we're in the process now of reviewing those responses, doing our usual evaluation. That is going to take place between September and December of this year. We will be making a recommendation on that proposal to the Executive Steering Committee in December of this year. Once the Executive Steering Committee approves it or disapproves it, we will be going to the model board shortly after that, hopefully within the January timeframe. This is our paratransit, better known as our mobility services. We're in the process of reviewing all of the data there. We have vetted the current costs for our mobility. We've also assessed potential process policy improvements. Those are being done in the area of our certification, eligibility, and travel training. We're looking to see what improvements and efficiencies we can make along those lines. We're also looking at different scenarios for outsourcing mobility. As you can see here, we're reviewing 4 different scenarios. The number one is keep it in-house. We're giving MARTA employee an opportunity to present a proposal to us showing what can we do to make our mobility more efficient and also to reduce costs. We also have a turnkey proposal, and that is a fully automated system except for our certification and eligibility. We looked at a brokerage proposal and a contracted management proposal. So those are the 4 proposals that we are reviewing right now for the sourcing effort on mobility. Here's the current cost that we calculate for our mobility service. MARTA's current cost right now is roughly about $26 million, with our cost per revenue hour at 69.48, and our cost per unlinked trip based on our NTD report is 44.62. Now, to the right of that, our consultant have given us some projected market costs that we are trying to achieve by looking at sourcing. Right now, our current cost at $26 million, the projected market cost is around 21, which is roughly about a $5 million savings on our mobility services. Cost per revenue hour dropped from 69 to 56, with our cost per unlinked trip going from 44 to 36. Now, in association with my group looking at paratransit, and we've got some other groups that are also looking at all of our operational efforts. The first bullet is my office, where we're reviewing certification, eligibility, and travel training. We've got our operational department looking at some immediate action plan to bring some, to calm down some of the issues that we're seeing right now with our mobility service. Our DO department put together a blue ribbon panel where they secured external stakeholders to secure, to look at getting input from that group as to what some of the improvement they would like to see us do with our mobility service. Also, our planning department is doing a comprehensive operational analysis of our entire operational department, and they too are focusing on mobility and certification and eligibility. The last 2 initiatives that we're looking at are our cleaning services optimization. Here we're looking to optimize or source all of our cleaning function for bus, rail, and our facilities. Currently, we have over 300 employees in that area that do cleaning function for MARTA. We're just starting that initiative, and we're doing coming up with all of our requirements to maintain and to see if it would be feasible to source our cleaning function. This last initiative is our workman's compensation cost containment. What we're trying to do here is come up with a means of modifying. We got a modified work duty program. We want to make sure that we are maximizing the use of that program. Currently, that program only allows for 21 slots for employees to return to work after being injured or for any reason being out of work. We want to try to change that and open that up so we can bring more people back into work and get them off of workers' comp at a much earlier pace. We are also looking to bring in a new technology system, one that would help us for management information. This system would help us to improve our trends with workers' comp claims and to review root causes when we have accident. And right now, the current system we have is not getting that job done, and that system is an old DOS-based system, so we need to update that system, and we are about 90% with completing that process. And that completes my presentation.
Questions for Mr. Allen? I had Representative Taylor up first.
Okay, going back to the marketing projects, I ride MART on a daily basis, and I've always get several questions on content, like for movie or game posters. Is there any filtering process? Do you say PG-13 or something like that? Just because it is a public service, and I just don't know the answer to that.
Yes, there is. Ryland McClendon is going to address that for us.
Good afternoon.
Ms.
We
McClendon?
have an advertising policy, and our consultant, our vendor, who is CBS Outdoor, any of their proposed ads must come through us to be sure that it meets within the confinements of that advertising policy. So we do have a filter, and it's something that we monitor constantly.
Thank you. I just didn't know what the threshold was. I just wanted to ask the question.
What we do in terms of ads, it must be an ad that is acceptable through the ad council, the big organization. Again, in terms of our policy, you must always be about advertising a good for sale. And so we are limited in terms of, we wanted to say happy anniversary to the Boy Scouts or something of that nature. The policy does not permit that. And of course, we also have limits on any kind of material of a sexual orientation nature.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And I'll follow up with another question, not on that, but the paratransit optimization, you mentioned a system where you could have possibly employee-based solutions.
Yes, sir.
My company does a thing where, if people come up with better ways, for lack of a better word, build the mousetrap or fix the process, there's a profit share that can be, can go into that if they can, suggest something, because a lot of guys, as Sam Walton said, you can talk to the people in the boardroom or you can talk to people on the loading dock, and sometimes the guys on the loading dock know a lot more about what's going on than the people in the boardroom, and can suggest a fix that might be very simple that saves a whole lot of money across the system. Do you anticipate putting some sort of bonus system in or something like that, or a reward system, whatever you want to call it, to facilitate that and incentivize it?
Well, we do have a program right now that incentivizes anybody coming up with any suggested changes that saves a lot of money. We do have a program in place right now to address that.
Okay. And one more question, totally different issue again. Cleaning services optimization. You've talked about outsourcing, and I've talked with Mr. Parker here before with this. Have you thought about pushing out the parameters as to where people can smoke and eat and things like that? Because as a frequent rider, I see every day, I think a lot of the cleaning things that happen are folks inside the stations that litter as a train comes up. I'm going to get rid of my cigarette. I'm going to get rid of this. Have you thought about just pushing those parameters out at some point?
Right. We're going to pull together a full-scale look at how we handle everything from smoking on our facilities whether they're at work or within the extended area, like you mentioned, the stations and so forth, and haven't developed those guidelines just yet, but it's something we're taking a fresh look at as we speak.
Thank you.
Senator Ford.
I want to ask a couple of questions about the mobility, the paratransit, the status of the paratransit. It is my understanding that the paratransit RFP for outsourcing was to have gone out a short while ago and did not go out. Is that true? And if so, when will it go out?
No, sir, that's not true. The RFP, we're still in the process of preparing it and developing it. That is not slated to go out until the 1st of December.
Okay.
Well, let me clarify this, because there's a clarification on that. The way the MARTA system generally works, the way the board generally operates, is that staff will bring to the board for consideration, even before we send out an RFP. We'll say, is it okay to the board to submit this, and then they'll give us feedback, and then if systems are go, we move forward.
So the RFP will go out.
So that's what was delayed for a month, was that piece.
Okay. And so the RFP will go out in December. Then it will be brought, then the responses will be brought to the executive committee in January. Is that correct?
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead, Davis.
When the RFP goes out in December, we will get it back in, I think, in about 2 months for the people who proposed on it. My evaluation team will go through an evaluation process to review those proposals that comes in. Once we go through all the proposals, we will make a recommendation to the executive steering committee whether to move forward. If the executive steering committee approves what we're recommending, then we'll go to the MARTA board. But that process, going to the MARTA board, is sometime during 2015.
Yes, sir. Okay. I have a question about something regarding the streetcar, although it's not your operation.
Can I add one more thing? Because one other piece of information is important that I wanted to add to what Davis mentioned. Even before the December board action, we still have another piece in between. So we've got a couple other things that need to occur. The first one would be that the board has to take action in November to allow for the RFP to be disseminated in December. And then throughout that entire process, one of the things we're looking at is what Mr. Taylor mentioned a little bit. If the employees come forward and their numbers look better than, say, what the projections are for savings and so forth, we would look at that and then take that to the board for their consideration as well.
Okay. All right. Now let me ask you a question.
I don't think you want Davis to answer the streetcar.
No, whoever can answer it, Chief, maybe Chief can answer it. But I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that on the streetcar there was an extra $100,000 spent to wrap the streetcar, and that $90,000 of that came from City Hall and $10,000 came from MARTA. Is that true?
I'm not even familiar with that expenditure, and we can go do some research and find out, but I'm not familiar with it.
And if I can follow up, it's my understanding, and I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, that there was a problem with the color of the streetcar, that it had to be rewrapped to make it more reflective, and thus an extra $100,000 was spent. 9010 City Hall, MARTA. Right. Could you check into that?
We can check into it.
And let me know, because it seems to me that's an expenditure that, because after you find that out, I'm going to ask, was that expenditure, if it wasn't the case, and we're not sure that it was, if that expenditure of $100,000 was made, was it brought to the board? How was that? How was it approved?
Right. And again, I'll look into it. I would be very surprised.
Okay.
So if something like that occurred, it had to have occurred a few years ago. Mm-hmm. But to my knowledge, the expenditures that the streetcar bring to us, we get reimbursed for those from the city.
If you could get that,
yes, we'll take a look.
The chair and as a pass through, or however you want to get it to me, I'd like to know.
Now, I've always understood the arrangement with the city to be that, that MARTA would be fully reimbursed for anything. Is
Right.
that
The current arrangement is that the city, the way it all worked out was MARTA and the city applied for the grant because MARTA was at that time the only Federal Transit Administration recognized grantee. We made the formal application. The city owns the asset, so they're the owners of the streetcar and the tracks and the facilities and all those things. And MARTA is in partnership with the city in operating, but our cost, MARTA's cost as we move on and our ongoing costs are reimbursed by the city. So even once we start the operation, we'll have several people who are on the MARTA payroll who will be helping to operate that system. Those costs will be reimbursed by the city as well.
right? And then also with regard to the paratransit RFP, it's been my understanding, and I just want to that it is like the mobile payment RFP in the sense that you're looking at flexible approaches. So,
Right.
all right.
We're seeing who has the best ideas.
All right.
And Mr. Chair, I've stated it before and I'll state it again. As far as the streetcar, I think those guys ought to be doing it and not City Hall. I think it's too ripe for politics to inject itself in decision-making when you have the second floor involved as opposed to the professionals who have the most and long-standing
I
experience.
don't think the second floor is involved at all.
No,
You're talking about
not
City
the second floor. I mean
City
that
Hall.
second floor, a block across the street, around the corner.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to follow up on the paratransit RFP. I may have misheard. I think Chairman Jacobs may have corrected this. The RFP will be released in December. Is that what I heard?
It's currently on pace to be released in December, yes.
I also heard you mention that keeping the operations in-house is being analyzed at the
We
same
have not
time?
received a proposal as of yet, but if we receive a proposal, that's something we would take a strong look at. In addition, and this is one of the things that I know the folks from KPMG mentioned, it's probably a year ago when we had a discussion in the other room, and it was as you go through this process, there is no two systems are alike. Every city is a little bit different. Every transit authority is a little different. So what we might find is that we go through this entire process, and those numbers that Davis put up a little while ago that indicated that MARTA is spending 25 points some odd $1 million, that when we get the RFPs back from the private sector, they may not be cheaper. And if they're not, then there is no compelling reason at that point then to move forward on the sourcing initiative, but instead we would focus more on how do we keep our cost, keep the service in-house, but how do we get it cheaper and how we get it more effective, more higher quality customer service, but getting it done more cheaply.
Absolutely, and I applaud that goal. I think that's what everyone is expecting and hoping to achieve. My question is more on timing and process. Will the in-house proposal be considered at the same time as RFP responses?
It could be. That's what we would prefer. So if we get an in-house proposal, we'll evaluate that as efficiently as we can or expeditiously as we can. But let's say if we don't get one, and that's possible too, we may not get one. If we don't, then we go through the rest of this process, and I think one of two things will materialize. Either we'll get some proposals from the private sector that are cheaper, more efficient, with high levels of customer service, and then we potentially we would go to the MARTA board and ask them to make a decision as to whether we move forward or not, or we get numbers that don't really bring forward a material savings. If that's the case, then we would look to see how we would make the internal improvements to bring down costs.
So what I'm hearing is that if you receive an internal proposal that you are comfortable with will achieve the cost savings and the performance that you're looking for, you may not go out with an RFP.
It negates part of the rationale for going out in the first place. That was that was.
But how would you then determine whether there might be additional cost savings by a sourced vendor?
Yeah, because one of the main things we went through in this whole effort was to have the consultant scour our cost, and they spent months on going through, here's how much you're spending, here's how you compare to this group, to that group, and so forth. We feel very comfortable about knowing how much we're spending at this point. Now it's a part of evaluating, can someone else do it cheaper? and with higher levels of customer service, that sort of thing. So that's where we stand.
So that would precipitate a need for RFPs to be received to determine if that
In all
is
likelihood,
ultimately-
that's the direction we would go in. But again, we have stopgap opportunities for the board to consider as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
All right. Representative Taylor.
I'm just going to follow up on that. For an internal proposal, do you have a process that would they have to meet the same standards as your external RFPs, or what would the process be for that, for like an internal, group or whatever, a study group or something like that to propose something? Would they be considered with the same weight as an RFP, or I just want to ask the question?
Davis's group would take the first look, and then we'd see what else we'd need to put together for the full evaluation. Because we haven't done that part yet. That's something brand new for us.
And I was searching my brain. Our company calls it gain sharing, which if with the employees, if they basically if you have an employee group or an internal group that comes up with that, the gain sharing goes as a bonus check or something like that.
Right. In fact, we had a system like that, someone like that in Charlotte, where our internal group won the work, and each year we would do an analysis of how much they saved, and then the money was distributed to the employees.
Right. Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, Mr. Allen, it's always a pleasure seeing you, and we'll have you back in a couple months.
Great, thank you.
Before the end of the year, though. I'm not going to let 2014 end without seeing Davis Allen again.
You got it, sir.
Transformation Guru. Chief Dunham, certainly I've heard a lot of compliments from members of the committee about the direction in which obviously we know the crime statistics have always been good, but the direction in which the perception of public safety on the system is headed. And so we always like to have you in from time to time to give us a briefing, and we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Jacobs and members of the MARTOC Committee. It is my pleasure to be back to give you an update. I think we have some really good news to share today. As you were stating, Chairman Jacobs, about our the perception of crime on MARTA, the increased visibility, we put in a number of initiatives several years ago, and I think they're paying off. The increased visibility is ongoing in our stations and on platforms. We have targeted enforcement at 5 points. We're working with the local partners at 5 points. We're partnering with several neighborhood community leaders as well as business leaders in the 5 points area and the downtown improvement district. As you can well imagine, it will take a village to try to help improve the entire area, and it's not just a MARTA problem. The daily train sweeps, we're addressing our sleepers. We're continuously riding the last trains and making sure that the sleepers are not sleeping all day, and we're making sure that they're off the trains at night so they're not sleeping on the trains and going into the yard. If you've ridden our system in the last couple of years, if you noticed our neon yellow visibility shirts, some people call them our highlighter shirts, but they work, and you can actually see the officers. They actually like them, just like that. Thank you, Senator Thompson. But yeah, so highlighter shirts, but they work. People are really seeing the officers now. I think on social media, it has definitely paid off, and they say that they see the officers. Mandatory train patrol continues. We cover 60% of our trains from 4 p. to 2 o'clock in the morning. Based on our, feedback from our customers, that's the time that they like to see the officers the most. Not to say that we don't have officers on the trains during the day, it's just not 60%. But we do have officers on the train during early morning rush hour. The Atlanta Police and the MARTA Police, we continue our joint bike patrol unit at 5 points in the 5 points area, and we are having great impacts in the Barbara Asher Square area. The Segway patrol at 5 Points and Lindbergh stations are continuing, just adding more tools to our toolkit of how we're going to fight crime. And so we added a Segway patrol last year, and it's paying off. We are target hardening our system, and we use surge sweeps called Thor that we're using sporadically just to keep the bad guys off their kilter. And then, of course, we do a bus marshal program that's patterned after the Federal Air Marshals program, and we make sure that we're always looking out for our bus operators. Several years ago, we had a surge of bus operator assaults, and we're still committed to that program, and we keep plainclothes as well as uniform officers on bus routes. The bus operators let us know if they're having a problem. They fill out a form, they hand it to us, and we put somebody on the route. Police overtime was an issue a couple of years ago. It has drastically been reduced. We put some new controls in place, and our overtime has been reduced by $1.5 million in FY13 and $800,000 in FY14. So we have drastically reduced our overtime. But this has also helped. Another way that helped is that we added 25 new officers. We reduced them $2 million in overtime that the board was so gracious to give us a couple of years ago, but we needed the bodies. And so we worked with our financial staff, and they came up with a cutoff of 25 officers, and we reduced the overtime. And I think you will see in our crime stats that it's actually starting to pay off. Additional savings, of course, we have to get the officers hired, but I think we'll start seeing that soon. As you remember, November 9th of last year, we started our Ride with Respect program, and you asked us to come back and give you an update on how that's going. If you recall, we had 4 objectives when we started our Ride with Respect campaign. Improve service delivery by creating a positive transit experience, reaffirm MARTA's commitment to its customers and employees by curtailing undesirable behavior. Mr. Parker called it knucklehead behavior. They talked him out of that for a marketing campaign. But the attract new customers as well as increase the frequency of existing ridership and to strengthen our overall image of MARTA. How do we do? This program has really added additional benefits to MARTA. We have been able to reduce the number of customer complaints relating to the behaviors outlined in the policy. We have increased the overall quality of service survey satisfaction ratings. We have improved positive feedback from frontline employees. We have increased the visitors to our itsmarta.com. We have increased ridership, and we have been able to improve MARTA presence on social media networking sites, as well as getting more positive press in the media, according to Lyle Harris. So what do our numbers look like? From the beginning of this program to date, we have suspended 2,740 folks from MARTA. Fare evasion is the most prevalent suspension that we give out at 1,430. The total number of appeals, we have an in-house appeals process, 266, and a total of repeat offenders, some need more convincing than others, 165. That's just an overview. The top 3, of course, fare evasion, which we have an ongoing group to just deal with fare evasion, and then, of course, public indecency, and, disorderly conduct, and then public indecency. So we're working on those avenues, and I think once we opened up the restrooms, I think some of the public indecency actually went down. The repeal, this is just the outcome of some of the appeals. As you can see, that we've suspended 13 people for over a year, that they cannot be on the system riding for about a year. And then, of course, some of the other contracts that you see here. Our crime rate, we talked about crime, we talked about the perception of crime. I think it's trending downward, which is what we want to see. And I think we had a rough patch last year, but as you can see, once we got some of these 25 officers hired and now they're starting to get out on the system, I hope that's a trend that continues, and we will definitely see our ROI on that. The security camera installation timeline, We, as you know, 443 buses have been completely installed with video cameras. The 187 mobility vans have been completed. There's only 30 vans that are not, and because we purchased new mobility vans. And we have 318 rail cars that we will start installation of cameras on our rail cars in January. We just started a pilot October 6th, so the test pilot will be from 30 to 60 days, and then we will go full installation in January of 2015 on cameras on trains. Video analytics. Video analytics is one of our newest initiatives. We call it smart technology. It's technology software programming, and it analyzes live CCTV video feeds. So for instance, it's a learned, we went with a vendor called BRS, and it's a learned behavior. And basically what you'll see here, and let me make sure it's embedded. But if you look at the boundary box, you see the red box there. I don't know if you can see it on yours, but if you see the boundary box, is it, okay. Oh, thank you very much. Yes. So you'll see any activity on our wayside or any activity that is unusual, then this system will give an alert to our radio 911 center, and they will alert the police and have someone go and check it out. So the video, you saw that it was a person wayside, which we put there for this test purpose, but it will put a boundary box. It will kind of put a box around that person and let us know that this person is not authorized to be on the wayside or be in any unauthorized area. So we get to decide what is not a area that we want people in, like after 2 o'clock in the morning, after the train system shuts down. If no one's supposed to be on the wayside except a train, then if a person gets down there, then this would alert us and we can get down there and help that person, or we can get them off the track way. So we're very excited about this new technology. We call it smart technology, and we're excited. The timeline, completion, June 2015. We're hoping that everything will be fully installed by that time. We just talked about our See and Say app. We hope all of you, I think I mentioned it last time, we hope everybody has downloaded this free app and is getting a lot of good downloads, a lot of good numbers. We're about 14,000 now. We just did a new public awareness campaign. As you see, we're trying to think outside the box, and so we actually had a flyover. We had a plane, we hired a plane to fly our ads, and we used it during some of the busiest times. We had Memorial Day weekend. We were getting ready for Memorial Day and September 11th at the same time. So we flew over the Braves game. It flew before the Falcons game. It flew before Georgia Tech games. And so just to make sure that everybody saw it. Once we do our public awareness campaigns, normally the ads will shoot up. So, and the downloads will shoot up, so that make people are listening and looking at the ad. We did a television spot. I don't know if you saw it, but we did a television spot about see something, say something, and protect your property, and it really, it did pay off. Next was coming up for us, and last but not least is our full-scale exercise. It's called Operation Hack-A-Wing. It's on October 31st, and that's why we went with that. But it's October 31st and November 1st is our full scale at the Chamblee station, and everyone is encouraged to, and they can come out and join us for Operation Hack-A-Wing. Any questions?
Yes, you have a question from Senator Miller.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, yeah. Yes, definitely we want to advertise it, and we've already talked to the marketing folks, and Mr. Parker definitely wants everybody to know when we get cameras on the trains. We think it's going to take 6 months to a year. Sergeant Green is our emergency preparedness coordinator, so but he's in charge of making sure that we stay on track. Of course, Ming's in partnership with Ming's group, but yeah, about 6 months, because like I said, we're doing a test. We'll be able to go faster once we learn where all the cameras need to be. Same way we did with the buses, but the initial cars, because there's so many, it takes a little while to make sure that we have the positioning just so. BART definitely is. I'm not sure about Metro. We can check, but I know BART is, and we actually have a lady who worked for BART here. But I know BART was one of the first to do cameras on trains. One thing that we're trying to do is live feed on trains, and so we can see. We currently have live feed on our buses, and it really has helped. You're welcome.
You are planning to do the same thing where you can actually see the screenshot of what's going on.
We definitely want to.
So that folks are aware.
Yes, we want to add that. That's a part of our RFP, and we definitely want to go. It's paid off in spades on the bus, and so we definitely want to extend that to the train as well.
Can that be done with the existing screens that are presently mainly used for advertising?
We checked that. No, that would have been, yeah. We asked that in order to save money, but they said no, it's not, and it's antiquated equipment. But it's already in our RFP, so it won't cost us any more. I don't think to do that because it's already a part of our RFP. We made it an option in our RFP. But we're excited about the fact that we'll have eyes on the train, which we hadn't had in a very long time. Extra eyes.
Well, no, certainly, you know, the clearer you can make it to folks to riders that that there are cameras,
yes,
the better, obviously. You know, I think advertising helps in that regard, like Senator Miller mentioned, but I do find the screens to be useful on the buses,
Mm-hmm.
so would certainly like to see the same thing on the trains if that's in the cards.
Okay, very good.
Senator
Look forward
Ford.
to it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
About a month, well, it was this summer, I believe, it was reported that there were a group of children, young people coming from Atlanta to the East Point station.
Okay.
And that they were at the East Point station, either in the station or nearby, creating problems, including criminal activity. I'm just curious, what on that particular instance, what was the result of that? Because it wasn't just a MARTA problem; it was a East Point Police and a Atlanta PD problem as well. I assume that y'all cooperated, but what was the result of that? To the more global issue, in terms of the suspensions that
Yes,
you're
sir.
talking about,
Yes, sir.
how many of those are juveniles, and what is the disposition with the juveniles and that kind of thing? If you could help me to understand what happened in East Point and more generally what the status of young people is.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that.
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. Yes, we have this last year, we had an influx of students coming from Atlanta going to the Forest Hills Academy, which is an alternative school near East Point.
Yep.
First time that they came, they used to be spread all out, all over across the city. They all emerged on East Point at one time. So we had no idea what to expect, and City of Atlanta Schools was able to save about $18 million because they did away with the yellow school buses and they put them all on MARTA. They purchased cards at student rates, but they put them on us. So we had no idea. So after the first year, Mr. Parker scheduled a meeting with the Atlanta school chair, and but we basically sat down and talked about the fact of how this is impacting MARTA, and we reached a compromise that now everybody works together. That the City of Atlanta schools will send their buses back to East Point to pick up their kids and take them to the school, and they will ride to MARTA stations like every other customer, but now they're responsible for getting them to school. What was happening is that the kids did not want to go to school. on the yellow school buses. They want to ride the regular route buses, and then our customers were complaining that the kids were rowdy. So then they would get off, they would hang out in the community, and that's when they had the problem with East Point, with the community saying this is too much. The kids were destroying property. The kids were throwing seats and objects out of the window. So it became a huge issue. But what we worked out, we meet monthly with everybody. We chair the meeting. We make sure that everybody's is there, because we want to make sure that everybody's at the table. And so we want to make sure that the school's involved, the alternative schools involved, all of the folks at the Atlanta school systems involved. So everybody meets and we talk about what's going on. We have truancy sweeps now to make sure that everybody gets on the bus, and Atlanta have their principals come over and assist us with getting folks on the buses. And so, it still have challenges, but it has gotten a lot better. So we're working on that.
So this involved Forest Hills Academy?
Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with Forest Hills Academy.
Yes.
I appreciate your answer. I'm not necessarily satisfied, not with what you're doing. I think you're doing what you're probably the initiator of the good stuff that's going on with it. But I'm not happy with some of the other stuff, and I'll let APS know that.
Yes, sir.
And I have a issue that I need to follow up with you on in my district. So
yes, sir.
If you're going to be around,
I will. I'll stay around.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Chief. Thank
Good to see you, ma'am.
here. On the security cameras on the buses and the rail cars, will you have video monitors so folks within those vehicles will be able to see what they're up to, and perhaps deter their behavior by knowing that they are being observed?
Yes, just like we do on the buses currently. That's public view monitoring. It really has helped when people see themselves. They tend to act better. But we try to model that. We will definitely try to model that on the trains as well. And then that'll take some time just to kind of see what's the best place and placement. But we get the cameras on first, and then we try to get the public view monitoring on before we go live. But yeah, it definitely has helped deter some activity.
Thank you. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Further questions for Chief Dunham? Representative Taylor.
Chips aren't flying there with them. Chief, I got a couple questions for you. One is just a comment. Excellent. Like I said, I ride MARTA all the time, and the visibility is just outstanding.
Thank you.
With the folks out there. I'm going to ask one granular question because I get offered 5 points today, and sort of from an equipment standpoint, do you guys carry do officers carry tasers?
Some of our officers carry tasers. The officers who are out, along like our K-9 officers and our bus officers who go out by themselves. But we want to eventually look at tasers for every officer. But that's something that we're looking at now. But we do carry. Some of our officers do carry.
Is that
tasers.
a budgetary issue? Because I'm just having set up a police department and done what we equipped all our officers with tasers, and the thing that we found out was that intermediate level of force, where you go from an impact weapon or fists or something like that to a firearm, having something intermediate that just stops it. I think the stats we've had in the past 5 years, about 12 incidents where deadly force would have been used. You can deter that with a taser, or stop that in an intermediate thing. So I don't know if that's a budget issue. I just wanted to ask the question because.
No, I don't think it's a budgetary issue. We get the FTA 1% funds that we will, make the recommendation that we could use. You can use it for training and equipment, and so I think that's something that we could definitely use. We're trying to we're going to make a recommendation for the 2015 budget that we could actually purchase tasers for every officer, so that our officers wouldn't have to go to that deadly force. That could use that next level.
Step, and that's, it's just been very effective. That's just a comment.
That's true.
Next one, let me see. Here we go. I think the overtime the reductions are great. I mean, whether you're driving a bus or carrying a weapon, but they're both weapons when you get fatigued. And that's fantastic. Let's see. Where are we going with this? the surveillance system with the video analytics, I love that, just because we use the same thing in the military, which is called, anomalous behaviors type things, where you see something that just doesn't, and it might be a rat running down the track, but it alerts you to something is not normal here, and I think that's just a great system where it keeps your eyeball resources on target, but you can alert them very good. And I just want to make a comment I think that's fantastic. One question, again, another observation just writing today. I see folks passing out pamphlets at stations. Is there only one group that gets to do that? And it's just a question that I have no idea what the answer is to. That might not be for you, Chief, but
we always seek legal counsel.
All right.
Okay. We always seek legal counsel.
We've had many lively discussions about this. There's not only one group that is permitted to do that.
Okay.
Any group outside of our fare gates, we cannot control that area. There is one group that's more inclined to be out there distributing literature, but we cannot prohibit any group that wishes to do so.
Is that on station property, or is that inside the actual fare gate? Because
inside the fare gates, we may prohibit it, and anywhere where it may impede the egress and ingress of our patrons, but not once you get out into some of the other areas.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question. Thanks.
Can I ask what group that is?
It's a Christian group. But I see them when I ride. I guess they're more organized or more out there. Okay.
We've been in communication.
I just thought that there was,
but
I didn't think there was a contract or anything like that out there for that. But what's that? With God. Thank you, Fran. The other one, back with the chief.
Yes,
do y'all get classified briefings from the federal government, like Homeland Security, FBI, JTTF, on threats that you have coming?
Oh, yes.
On the classified level? Okay.
Definitely. We are. We meet. They've gotten much better. The FBI has gotten much better about sharing information. TSA, of course, we have a conference call with transit chiefs. We have a conference call every week lately because of the Ebola scare. But we have conference calls, and then we get the intel briefings because of us being a Tier 1 agency. We get the intel booklets, briefings every day, every week.
Your EOC, do you share that, or do you have an EOC with a joint EOC, or do you share that with somebody else? Or, the Atlanta or the county EOCs? I just want to kind of know the interaction between that.
Okay. Well, we do have our own EOC, Emergency Operations Center. We do have our own, but we can also have a seat at the Fulton counties. We have a seat now at GMAS, and so we work in conjunction with all of the local, state, and federal partners. But we do have our own, and then we actually have room. We're building one that we hope will open soon at Chamblee, and then we can, we can bring in other partners. Ours right now is just space prohibitive, but once we get into our new one, then we can invite other people in, like GMAS and our federal partners.
And the local jurisdictions, even that say the Chamblee PD or
yeah,
something.
Definitely, in our local jurisdictions. Yes.
Okay. And I love another comment, not a question. I love to see the full-on exercises because you fight like you train. And but what I think they're useful exercises because you go through and you learn from them. You'd rather make a mistake or identify some issues during an exercise than during a real event, and I think that's just fantastic.
Thank you. You're all welcome.
Further questions for Chief Dunham? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation today, and we'll have you back sometime soon.
Sir.
All right. And last but not least, a presentation of MARTA's preliminary 2015 legislative agenda. We have Rhonda Briggins. We're getting the band back together, but it's always a pleasure to see you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of MARTOC. As you've said, Chairman, this is a proposed legislative agenda, so it probably will change before we come to the General Assembly. First, as you all know, we have been looking internally, trying to make sure that we're very efficient. And so in mind of continuing down that road, in 2013, you all passed HB 386, and that was the ad valorem tax bill. Unfortunately, MARTA has had a very negative impact as a result of the passing of that bill. We're just calling this an unintended consequence because over the next 5 years, we have projected that we will lose $46 million. And also as a result of this particular piece of legislation, we will have our bonding capacity decreased about $12 million. And so we will be coming back talking to you all about possibly making us whole in this process. Next,
and of course, for those who may not be aware, we did this very same thing for the cities and the counties. This is a result of the state for sales of motor vehicles moving from a sales tax to the TAVT, which is from the sales tax to the TAVT. The MARTA doesn't participate in the TAVT, but does charge a sales tax in Fulton and DeKalb counties. One thing I would like to see, because this is an issue that I actually certainly do have a commitment to exploring further. One thing I would like to see is estimates maybe going out 5 years of how much MARTA anticipates each year losing in sales tax revenue from the sale of motor vehicles in Fulton and DeKalb counties that it would otherwise be entitled to if it were a sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
And Clayton as well, I suppose.
And now Clayton, yes. Okay, next on our list, as you know, we're currently enjoying the great privilege of having the elimination of the 50-50 for over the next 3 years, and so we thank you for that flexibility. But we will continue to ask for a permanent elimination of the 50-50, and that is the elimination of the 50-50 sales tax, as it is split between capital and operations. And so you all are very familiar with this piece of legislation. Next are, as we went through last year cleaning up the MARTA Act, we had a few things that we missed, and so we wanted to bring some of these things to your attention. This is the concession services. As we have geared up in our area of TOD and really improved that area, and as well as our concession services, we have found there are a few things that we probably need to look at a little differently. Currently, right now in the MARTA Act, anything dealing with concessions must go to our board for approval. So we're right now prohibited to do any type of pilot programs around concessions, and so we would like to come and talk to you about maybe cleaning up this area around concessions and TOD when in the area of competitive bidding, as well as some other language that we should get in line with our current contract language. And so I'll be coming talking to you about that. Also in the spirit of looking at efficiencies, as probably many other agencies within the state, we're required to pay the 1% administrative fee for collecting the sales tax by the state. That is now costing MARTA $4.5 million. Just wanted to throw that out there of looking at if there's anything in the future that we could do around this particular item that we wanted to have you all take that into consideration.
Senator Miller.
We don't have an amount. I can get back with you all of what our finance folks.
I think you're absolutely right.
Okay.
We've got that state. That state is encoded in a lot of areas. But in a lot of cases, it's no more than 1%. But in your particular case, it is 1%.
Yes.
And that's probably a lot more than it should be.
Okay.
So I think you got a real valid point there. But I do think you have to be able to tell us what the actual cost would be for the state.
Okay.
Because somehow you come up with savings, so that number's out there somewhere.
Okay. I'll go back to our finance guys and get that information and present it to you all.
I do think you've got a valid point.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Next are board considerations, and some of these we've already talked about a little. Again, as we went in to clean up the MARTA Act last session, some of these items had some unintended consequences, and so I want to bring that to you all's attention as well. Currently, right now, we have a supermajority in several areas, and talking to our board of directors as well as the general manager and others, we probably could look at streamlining the process of a supermajority instead of having a supermajority move in the space of just a simple majority on several votes. And of course, we would not have that for hiring a general manager or the general counsel. Those type things will stay as a supermajority. But there are some other contractual things currently right now where you need a supermajority, and that might be a little too much if we're talking about streamlining the process and getting to a place of efficiency.
I would just need for you to identify what you want to change, and then, I also would, and then we have to obviously consider the policy behind that. But first, I think it starts with MARTA identifying which supermajority votes it wants to change, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
And then, it might also be useful to know whether that's actually been an impediment to getting something done, and why.
Okay.
So I think in terms, I always want to be careful about changing the rules of engagement for how the board gets something done. But if it's something of a more perfunctory nature that, I will say this, there were things in the MARTA Act in reading through it for our most recent rewrite that, I looked at and said, well, why the heck is that in there? And could get no good justification for anybody. And so we simply repealed it. And that may be the case here as well, but I do want to be very careful about visiting these. So I want to understand what it is and whether it's been an impediment. If it has been an impediment, why? And then we can go from there.
Okay, I appreciate that. Again, I think you are completely aware of this one. This is to amend the current number of MARTA board members for tiebreakers. Currently, because of the new law, we removed the GDOT member as a voting member, and so we have an even board until 2017, and so we probably just need to go back and figure out what would be the best remedy for that particular tiebreaker. And we have had a tie.
Right.
We've had a tie vote so far. We have had.
We'll certainly fix that.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Next, our board members. We haven't had a tiebreaker. No. Okay. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I see everyone's like, no, she's wrong. Okay. So we have not had that impede us. I'm sorry. For the board members,
it is okay. It still needs to be fixed.
So for board member flexibility, our board members are asking that we allow a change in the number of meetings that they're required to have annually. Currently, right now, the MARTA Act requires a certain amount of meetings, and so case in point, if it's for the holidays or December, they have to have a certain amount of meetings, and so.
How many meetings are they required to have?
12. 12.
Once a month.
Once a month, 12. Okay. All right. The next is the amending language pertaining to the sales tax uses tax for joining the system. This is the part of the MARTA Act in which we came into when it was time for Clayton County to join MARTA. We are proposing the elimination of the half-penny option within the MARTA Act and moving to only the 1% as far as allowing prospective jurisdictions to join the system as we move forward.
Senator Miller.
I'd like to thank the MARTA board and I think you're in an obvious position. And I think you're absolutely right. We have changed. Everybody else is going to
I think we can all agree on that point. Yeah. Senator Ford.
Just on this whole issue of cutting meetings, I mean, what is the MARTA budget? $415 million operating budget. That's a lot of money, and you all do important work. And board members might want to contemplate their commitment. Once a month meeting for a board, directing a ship of this size, I don't think is too much to ask for people. But it's a consideration people ought to take, reflect on, contemplate when they're appointed or when their appointment's under consideration. If once a month, is too much, they might not want to come on the board. That's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, we have a few legal issues that we would like for you all to take in consideration. This was a part of the legislative agenda last year, which is sovereign immunity. We're looking to hopefully where the General Assembly would grant MARTA sovereign immunity with limited waiver, very similar to what some of the other government entities, especially the cities, enjoy. We were told and asked to go and talk to different people and look at other ways of maybe getting this done. And so I just wanted you all to know we are in that process of having those conversations necessary to even bring sovereign immunity back come 2015 during the General Assembly.
Senator Miller.
I'm curious, would you agree the other transit authorities rather
They.
I just curious, are they usually bring something? Because that would be very helpful.
Some do, like it just depends on where you are around the country. In Texas, we had sovereign immunity that limited the exposure to the transit system. In fact, some of the localities here have sovereign immunity, some of the other local jurisdictions. So we would just want to mimic what many of them already have.
Next, right with respect, the fines and the fees. Again, thank you all for allowing us to have the authorization to charge either a fine or a fee if under the new code of conduct of right with respect, if we have anyone violating any of those code of conducts. We would like to go back and put a little more meat on the bones with actually fleshing out and defining some of the details in which we can enforce that piece of authorization that you've already provided to us. And then finally, we've talked into detail also in the past around the parent transit trip shedding. This is the Medicaid fix. Basically looking at ways in which we could work with the third-party broker as well as DCH to come up with a way in which MARTA will have a better amount that we're receiving for these Medicaid trips that we provide to citizens that ride the mobility services. We've already started also to meet and talk with DCH, and hopefully, again, we could come back with something working with between DCH and you to come up with a fix for this particular issue. And that concludes all of our proposed legislative agenda items.
First of all, I'll say I don't anticipate any wholesale changes to the MARTA Act, and I certainly don't expect any major changes being initiated by the General Assembly. I do get the sense that there's a couple of areas where we need to fine-tune what we did last session, and certainly committed to making those changes. I agree with Senator Miller that eliminating the half-cent option is a good move. And then we'll be happy to take a look at any other items relative to the MARTA Act specifically that MARTA would like us to consider. I would ask, I suppose, I mean, I know that you're preparing your legislative package for board approval in December, correct?
Yes, sir.
I would ask that concurrent with that, you work toward actually preparing language as well to present to us. It will just ease the process on our end. With an eye toward presenting both the legislative package with proposed language in December.
Okay.
So if you can get that ball rolling now, that would be greatly appreciated, and then we'll certainly take that under advisement as we go into the legislative session. But I certainly do want to have our ducks in a row when we get to the session in mid-January, knowing where we're going with any changes to the MARTA Act. And then we can have further conversations, obviously, about the TAVT issue, which would require separate legislation as well. That's not a MARTA Act issue.
Okay.
Any questions on the legislative agenda from members of the committee? Senator Fort.
I have a question about something else at the appropriate time that I missed.
Okay, is that relative to
the legislative package? No.
Okay. Senator Fort, you can, I mean, let me ask this, any questions regarding the legislative package? Seeing none, Ms. Briggins, it is a pleasure to work with you again, and we'll certainly continue having our discussions through December as well.
Thank you.
All right, and into the session as well.
Yeah.
Senator Fort.
Mr. General Manager, on the issue of the paratransit, do you have any idea of what an RFP would contain in terms of pay rates for drivers? Would it be 10, 11, 15, 16, 20, 21, 25, 26? Do you have any idea?
Let me make sure. Can you repeat the question? I want to make sure I followed.
On the paratransit, if you were to put it out for an RFP for outsourcing, do you have any idea what the pay and benefits would be for operators of the paratransit?
Right. What we would want to get back would be what the proposers would say is realistic. Because if they came back and said, we're going to hire drivers at $9 an hour, we know you're not going to hire a quality person and be able to run an operation at $9 an hour with bad benefits. So what we want to get from the private sector would be, here's how we would structure our whole program, and here's how we can do it better, cheaper, faster than you guys can do it. So that's what we'd expect to get back, is a whole proposal of cost, how they would monitor quality, how they would recruit people, incentivize folks, all those things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anything further from members of the committee? Seeing none, there being nothing further to come before the committee, this meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, respectfully, one, I'd like to ask you, there's no public comment.
I'll be happy to schedule a meeting with public comment on the agenda. That'll be the very next meeting.
Let me ask you. Last few sessions you've had, there's been no public comment. As for a lot of things that were said today, we don't necessarily agree with them. And I'll introduce myself to folks that don't know me. My name is Curtis Howard, and I'm the president and secretary of Amalgamated Transportation. It's almost a disgrace to have a meeting with legislators and no public comment. Second of all, since you didn't have it, within the next 30 days, I'd like to request that you give the workers of MARTA, the riding public with disability group that you're talking about outsourcing, and the constituent groups of the CAP, the City of Atlanta, and Fulton County, an opportunity to meet with this board here, this legislative group here, and voice their concerns and opinions, instead of just running this thing straight through without having a public opinion. So my request is that you meet with us within 30 days with all the constituency groups. I'm going to tell you the problem that I have with the disability group. When you change the meeting times around so much and cancel the meetings, they don't have an opportunity to schedule rides to get
Well, first of all, this meeting is only, I'm running the meeting. So, all right, I hear the request. I don't know whether I will meet a 30-day arbitrary deadline but I will promise you this: at the next meeting, we will have a public comment section. Anybody is welcome to speak who would like to speak. That meeting will be certainly sometime within the next 2 months. It'll either be in November or at the very latest December. It just depends on what else is going on at the time. But I'll be happy to do that. That's not a problem.
All right, and we would like to make sure that the disability group is getting the notices from the legislation.
All you need to do is, I believe everybody, I know that ATU is on my email distribution list. You just need to go see my secretary down in room 131 of the Capitol and tell her that you'd like to be added to the distribution list. She'll add that whatever group you'd like to the distribution list. This meeting has not changed in terms of its scheduling. It's always been, this particular meeting has always been this Monday at 2 p.m. and this room is unusual for us, but other than that. But in the next meeting, we'll certainly have a public comment section.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. That being, there being nothing further to come before the committee, this meeting is adjourned.